Paranormal phenomena in abandoned Antarctic stations. Antarctica, located at the south pole of our Earth, appears to be a frozen continent where there is hardly anything alive. In the last 200 years, many people who tried to conquer it got lost or died of starvation. In the years that followed, many researchers saw ghosts and other abnormal phenomena in abandoned stations. Now let's remember, I remember I spoke to one of our priests concerning this, uh, concerning ghosts and phantoms appearing in areas where there were battles or in a house that had been haunted. And he told me that when a person dies and he dies suddenly, unexpectedly, from the shock, sometimes the soul doesn't know where it is or is in pain, and especially when memorial services for the consecration of the dead have not been held. So that was his explanation. But going back to this, one such place is located on the small islet of Winter, which is included in the list of Argentine islands. This islet is sometimes called Wardy's House after explorer James Wardy, who was the chief scientist on Ernst Shackleton's 1914 to 1917 expedition. And now this building is collapsed. It's called the British Faraday Station, and after the Shackleton expedition, it was used as a station for meteorological and geophysical research until it was abandoned and all studies were moved to the neighboring island of Galindez. Now, Wardy's House is a kind of museum for the curious, and from time to time they go there just to see this time capsule, quote unquote, and then they report the strange phenomena happening in this place. Things in this house are constantly changing their place, their position, when no one is there. Some shadowy figures flicker in the windows of the house, and at dusk in the house they often see lights from lamps. At the same time, for a long time, there is no source of electricity in the house, and even the stoves do not work. A television program team, Destination Truth, stayed there for several days, and during this time, they experienced strange phenomena. Items fell from the shelves by themselves, doors opened and closed without human intervention, and some stripes moved around the house. Obviously, this is poltergeist activity. Now, the same team then looked at another unusual place in Antarctica, an abandoned whaling base on Ross Island. The base has been abandoned for many years. The group here saw orbs of light and heard strange voices, and some said they saw phantom silhouettes of people. Also, a strange digging sound of unknown origin was heard very loudly, and they saw a black silhouette. But the most chilling was a strange sound signal similar to Morse code, and decoding this transmission gave the well-known SOS sign. I think SOS is daddy-dat, dee-dat, daddy-dat, right? Now, these sounds for a short time came from somewhere on the island where there were apparently no research stations or groups of travelers. Later efforts to determine if another group had been lost and were sending their signal showed that none had been lost on the island at that time. Ross Island is known for abnormal phenomena and many deaths. In 1979, it became a place of death of tourists, and in the same year, November 28, 1979, a large aircraft with 257 passengers was flying to New Zealand. The crew had little experience in Antarctica. The instrument data was incorrect and visibility was poor due to clouds. The pilots had the ground clearance incorrect, and the plane crashed into the Erebus volcano at full speed. All the people on board were victims to that crash. And the bodies of the victims were stored for a long time at the Antarctican research base of McMurdo on the southern tip of the island before finally being transported to New Zealand. So it's not surprising that ghosts and other phenomena later began to appear at the place where the plane had crashed. Visitors and employees of the McMurdo base still occasionally report ghost people, quote unquote, wandering aimlessly in the Erebus area or around the base itself, and sometimes hearing terrible screams. These ghosts do not try to interact with people, they seem to live in some other reality. On the same Ross Island, there is another base called Scott Hut, built during Robert Scott's expedition in 1911. It was prefabricated in England before being transported there. Scott's entire team died, and their bodies and diaries were discovered after 8 months, including 3 bodies. Since then, everyone who was at this historical monument spoke of the extremely depressing atmosphere inside the hut, and that they had a feeling of fear, and that in the back there are strange sounds like something heavy being dragged on the floor, unexplained voices, and so on. Not far from the hut, where the bodies of 3 people were found, were buried on the spot in the same place, and a large wooden cross was placed. Near this cross, ghostly figures are also seen from time to time, and sometimes they look like people in clothes in the early 20th century, and sometimes at other times the ghosts seem much more modern. So obviously, it looks like there is a lot of poltergeist activity from the victims of the harsh weather or accidents or loss or whatever in the continent of Antarctica. And this I've translated from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.